Welcome. It is Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz, Ben Ferguson with you. It's nice to have you with us this Thanksgiving week, and we've got a lot to cover on the show today that you're not going to want to miss, including a moment of clarity, I think, for the Republican Party that deals with someone deciding, I'm going to resign from Congress. Senator, your reaction to Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, I'm out.
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene announced she's going to resign from Congress in January. It's a big deal. She was a major player of the House of Representatives. Her views, I think, had gotten more and more extreme. President Trump had announced he was withdrawing his support from her because she had gotten so extreme. We're going to break that down. We're going to talk about why she's stepping down. We're going to talk about what it means. I think it's a consequential moment in the House, and it's a consequential moment for the country. We're also going to talk about a really astonishing story, which is welfare fraud by Somalis in Minnesota funneled millions of dollars of taxpayer money to the Islamic terrorist organization Al-Shabaab. It really is a stunning story that's been reported, and it shows the really pernicious things that we're seeing unfolding in our country. And finally, we're going to talk about Texas redistricting. Texas redistricting, as everyone knows, the state of Texas redrew the map to add 5 Republican House seats. A federal district court struck that down. And then on appeal, the Supreme Court has halted the decision of the federal district court. We're going to talk about what's likely to happen in Texas redistricting and what it means for control of the House of Representatives in the midterms.
Yeah, it's a really incredible story. We're going to have that for you in a moment. All right, Thanksgiving week is here. Many of you are probably traveling, gathering with your families, and it's a great time to tell them about an incredible opportunity going on right now with Hillsdale College for free. Look, there is so much confusion in the world today, and it can be hard to find clarity and truth. But a new Hillsdale College mini-series on colonial America offers a powerful reminder that the first Americans were searching for the same things. They believe faith and reason reveal God's design for the world, and that understanding became the foundation of their courage and freedom. It's a stirring look at the ideas that still hold us together today. Now, a new Hillsdale College mini-series on colonial America is offering a fresh way to think about Thanksgiving. Beyond the food and the political debates, it reminds us what we should truly be thankful for: our freedom, prosperity, and our faith. The first Americans built all of that from nothing, and their story is told here with unmatched depth and inspiration. In a brand new 6-part documentary series, Hillsdale College professors will teach you and your family the religious, political, cultural, and economic ideas that shaped a uniquely American culture during the colonial period. And that is why I want you to take advantage of this. The idea of liberty, especially religious liberty, inspired the settlers of America to cross the Atlantic. Think about that. Check out this incredible work, this mini-series right now at Hillsdale. Now, Hillsdale College mini-series is completely free and it's easy to access. Plus, Hillsdale is offering you listeners of Verdict more than 40 other free online courses, including courses on C.S. Lewis, the stories of the book of Genesis, the rise and the fall of the Roman Republic, and you can even do Constitution 101. I'm in that class as we speak. So go right now to hillsdale.edu/verdict to enroll for free and get this mini-series. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/verdict to enroll for free. hillsdale.edu/verdict. All right, Senator, so let's start with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I genuinely thought this was a great moment for conservatives, for the conservative movement, for the Republican Party, watching her decide to resign. And the reason why I say that is because it gave me hope that we are so different than the Democratic Party. We police our own, and we call out those that are bad actors, unlike the Democratic Party that does not police their party at all. Now you're witnessing socialists getting elected in 2 major cities in this country and radical leftists that have taken over. And yet we still seem to have a moment of clarity where we're like, hold on a second, this is not what we believe. I found it incredibly encouraging, your reaction.
Well, Ben, I think you make a good point. If you look about, and this is something I've been talking quite a bit about, 10 years ago on the Democrat Party, we saw anti-Semitism, radical extreme anti-Semitism rising on the Democrat Party. And Democrat leadership didn't do anything about it. They basically looked the other direction. They said, gosh, this is a small fringe view. We don't need to worry about it. It'll be fine. And in the decade that followed, we have seen pro-Hamas radicals consume the Democrat Party. Now, you and I have talked about, and I've been talking publicly a lot about, I see the same thing potentially starting to happen on the right. I've seen more anti-Semitism in the last 6 months on the right than I've seen in my entire life. And my hope is the Republican Party doesn't make the mistakes that the Democrats did, that we say enough is enough, no. And I'll tell you, this is striking because if you look at in Republicans in the House of Representatives, the vast majority of elected Republicans in both the House and Senate are passionately pro-Israel. They're supporters of the U.S.-Israel alliance and relationship. They understand the national security benefits of standing with Israel. They understand that when Israel is killing Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists, when Israel is taking out Iranian IRGC terrorists, that they're making America safer. There are a handful of House Republicans who become more and more vocal as voices for being anti-Israel. Marjorie Taylor Greene was on the front of that list. In fact, the leading two House Republicans who had become vocal anti-Israel voices were Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
And I do think it's striking that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz, very soon, neither one of them is going to be in the House. Matt Gaetz already resigned, and Greene announced that she's going to resign in January. And I think that is a powerful statement. You ought to ask yourself, why didn't AOC resign?
Yeah.
Why didn't Ilhan Omar resign? Why didn't Rashida Tlaib resign? Why didn't the radicals in the Democrat Party resign? And it's because their leadership fundamentally was weak. And I want to commend Donald Trump. If there's one person who is most responsible for Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning, it is Donald J. Trump. Here's what he put out on Truth Social. Quote, "I am withdrawing my support and endorsement of quote-unquote Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of the great state of Georgia. Over the past few weeks, despite my creating record achievements for our country, including a total and complete victory on the shutdown, closed borders, low taxes, no men and women's sports, or transgender for everyone, ending DEI, stopping Biden's record-setting inflation, biggest regulation cuts in history, stopping 8 wars, rebuilding our military, being highly respected by every country in the world as opposed to being the laughingstock that we were just 12 months ago, having trillions of dollars, record-setting, invested in the USA, and having created the hottest country anywhere in the world from being a dead country just 12 months ago, and so much more. All I see wacky Marjorie do is complain, complain, complain. It seemed to all begin when I sent her a poll stating that she should not run for senator or governor. She was at 12% and didn't have a chance, unless, of course, she had my endorsement, which she wasn't about to get. Now, look, when Trump said that he was going to oppose her, it changed the dynamic significantly, and it changed it so much that she put out a statement this past week saying she's done. She's resigning in January. She's withdrawing from the Congress. And listen, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she got elected 5 years ago. She's not been in the House very long. She is a loud voice.
Yeah.
She used to be maybe the single loudest voice pro-Trump.
Yep.
And we saw her, and it actually, I think it's a cautionary tale about when you embrace anti-Semitic views, anti-Israel views, you quickly start down a slippery slope where she began attacking Donald Trump. She began attacking capitalism. She began attacking, much like Tucker Carlson, attacking who America is. She went on The View and had a love fest with the left-wing host on The View. She was arguing for expanding and extending the Obamacare subsidies. I mean, it really was a good example that once you start down that road, all of the rest of conservatism goes out the window as well.
Yeah, it was a moment where I was genuinely proud to be a conservative, also a Trump supporter, and I loved the fact the president was this blunt about it, because if you don't have moral clarity on issues like anti-Semitism, so goes your party. And we've seen what happens, and the Democrats are a cautionary tale. The most radical of the radicals in this country are now within the Democratic Party, and many of them are leading the Democratic Party. And I worry that we could go down that road if we didn't start policing our own and making sure that, especially those that become radical and anti-Semites, we're not policed better. I think the other part about this is not only is she going to be out, of Congress, but her voice is going to disappear, I believe, from the conservative movement as well in a major way. And that also is a consequence, whereas many times Democrats, it's a complete opposite of that.
Well, I don't know that it'll disappear. I actually think she may be similar to Matt Gaetz, where they both will continue to espouse wackier and wackier views that are more and more out of the mainstream of Republicans and conservatives. But I do think it will be a much smaller platform. And Ben, I actually talked to President Trump about it this weekend. He called me Friday night, and we spent probably 15, 20 minutes on the phone. We were talking about lots of different things. But one of the things, just as we were making conversation, it was about, 11 o'clock at night, Friday night. And I said, Mr. President, were you surprised that Marjorie Taylor Greene stepped down? And he sort of laughed and said, no, I wasn't surprised at all. And he mentioned, he said she was mad because he said she would call him once, twice, 3 times a week, and he wasn't calling her back all the time. And, he said, look, I've got 53 Senate Republicans. I've got 219 House Republicans. I've got a couple hundred leaders of countries across the world. And I sort of laughed. I said, yeah, look, you're a very, very busy man. And to be honest, I don't call Trump all that often. I probably talk to Trump, every 2 weeks, I'd say, on average. But I try not to. Some of my colleagues call him a lot. And I told him, I said, look, you're a busy man. I try not to bother you just to call, to tug on your shirt sleeve and say, hi. Yeah. Like I try to call when I've got a purpose, I've got an objective, I've got a decision that I think is important, something we need to get done. But it was interesting. He said she was calling him several times a week, and it was just too much. And I think his withdrawing his support from her is what caused her to drop out. And I'm glad of that. I mean, I do think it shows Republicans being willing to say, we're not going to embrace the radicals and extreme in a way that it's hard to think of a time the Democrats have done that in modern history.
Yeah, it really is. And I hope this also is a cautious shot across the bow to any others that are out there in the Republican movement that are going down this same road that, hey, if you think that the president's going to be silent about it, you're probably wrong, and that we police our own. That is a big, big thing. I want to talk to you real quick about our amazing sponsor, and it is Patriot Mobile. And people ask me all the time, how good is the coverage? Because you want to stay with the big mobile companies. I've been saying now for years, and they've been in business for well over a decade, that it is amazing coverage. If you've got coverage right now you love, you're going to love your coverage of Patriot Mobile even more. But you get rid of the woke left agenda. I am proud to report to you that my phone worked in Israel. I traveled internationally and had 0 issues with my cell service. Whether I was in Bethlehem or literally calling from Gaza at the Gaza Strip, this is not a joke, I had amazing coverage. Everywhere that I went, I flew back to the U.S. My phone worked perfectly. My emails, all the data. I was posting on social media from my phone. Tel Aviv last night. It was phenomenal. So if you're worried about coverage, don't be. Now, why should you switch to Patriot Mobile? Not only are you probably going to save real money every month, but then the magic happens. A portion of your bill every month goes back to support conservative causes, candidates, organizations that fight for our First and our Second Amendment rights, the rights of unborn children. And they do something that's really special. They stand with our men and women in uniform, whether it's police officers or law enforcement in general, or our men and women that fight for this country overseas. They stand with our wounded warriors and our fallen families who have lost a loved one so that there is the financial need and aid that is needed. So that's why I want you to switch to Patriot Mobile, because every time you pay that bill, you're making a real difference. Now, I also want to give you a free month of service. Go to patriotmobile.com/verdict. That's patriotmobile.com/verdict. Or call them 972-PATRIOT. That's 972-PATRIOT for a free month of service. Switch today. Make a difference. patriotmobile.com/verdict or 972-PATRIOT and get a free month of service with a promo code VERDICT. I want to move to this other subject that I think is also really important. It is a story that I hope everyone listening will actually share on social media, share this podcast where you can on social media as well, because this is one of those stories for me that I am hoping we will be able to make it go viral. There are so many people that voted for President Trump because they wanted there to be clarity on waste, fraud, and abuse in our government. It's what DOGE was created around, and the amount of waste, fraud, and abuse of our tax dollars has become absolutely massive. Now, we're seeing some states be very proactive in fighting this. We've seen local governments where it's happening. It's trickling down. I think that's also incredible. But there is a story that broke should make every American angry. And that is this story of the largest funder of Al-Shabaab. Turns out to be, and Al-Shabaab is a terrorist organization, a Somali terrorist organization, is actually the Minnesota Taxpayers. Now, that may just seem like a weird headline to people, but what we're witnessing is tax dollars funneling directly to the Islamic terrorist organization, and it's been going on at numbers that were clearly warning signs when Joe Biden was president, in the amount of funds that were leaving Minnesota, and no one seemed to bat an eye, or no one seemed to care that this was happening. Break it down for everybody that doesn't know anything about this.
Well, this is a story that's really at the intersection of two issues that matter enormously. Number one is waste, fraud, and abuse in government, and we see that at the federal government. We see that at the state level, particularly in big blue states. But secondly, the rise of radical Islam in America. And it's dangerous. It is threatening our liberty. And it is spreading. It's spreading often with the enthusiastic cheerleading of Democrat-elected officials. This story is right at the intersection of both of them. And so the City Journal reported, I'm just going to read a portion of this article because it really is, it's a stunning report. And it begins, the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer. How some of the state's welfare funds ended up in the hands of a terror group. Minnesota is drowning in fraud. Billions in taxpayer dollars have been stolen during the administration of Governor Tim Walz alone. Of course, Tim Walz was Kamala Harris's nominee to be VP. Democrat state officials overseeing one of the most generous welfare regimes in the country are asleep at the switch, and the media, duty-bound by progressive pieties, refuse to connect the dots. In many cases, the fraud has allegedly been perpetrated by members of the Minnesota's sizable Somali community. Federal counterterrorism support sources confirm that millions of dollars, millions, in stolen funds have been sent back to Somalia, where they ultimately landed in the hands of the terror group Al-Shabaab. One confidential source put it, quote, the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer. Our investigation shows what happens when a tribal mindset meets a bleeding heart bureaucracy, when imported clan loyalties collide with a political class too timid to offend, and when accusations of racism are cynically deployed to shield criminal behavior. The predictable result is graft, with taxpayers left to foot the bill. If you were to design a welfare program to facilitate fraud, it would probably look a lot like Minnesota's Medicaid Housing Stabilization Services program. The HHS program, the first of its kind in the country, was launched with a noble goal to help seniors, addicts, the disabled, and the mentally ill secure housing. It was designed with, quote, low barriers to entry and, quote, minimal requirements for reimbursement. Nonetheless, before the program went live in 2020, officials pegged its annual estimated price tag at $2.6 million. Cost quickly spiraled out of control. In 2021, the program paid out more than $21 million. By the way, this was projected to be $2.6 million. In the following year, annual costs shot up to $42 million, then $74 million, then $104 million. On August 1st, Minnesota's Department of Human Services moved to scrap the HHS program, noting that payment to 77 housing stabilization providers had terminated this year due to credible allegations of fraud. Joe Thompson, then the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, went even further, saying, the vast majority, let me repeat that, the vast majority of the HHS program was fraudulent. On September 18th, Thompson announced criminal indictments for HHS fraud against Mokhtar Hassan Aden, Mustafa Dayeeb Ali, Khalid Ahmed Dayeeb, Abdifita Muhammad, Christopher Adesoli Falad. By the way, Ben, you try to go through those names. I'm
going to pass on that. You did a great job. I give you a B+ on that.
Okay, 6 of whom, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, are members of Minnesota's Somali community. Thompson made clear this is the first round of charges for HHS fraud that his office will be prosecuting. Most of these cases, unlike a lot of Medicare fraud and Medicaid fraud nationally, aren't just overbilling, Thompson said in a press conference announcing the indictments. These are often just purely fictitious companies, solely created to defraud the system And that's unique in the extent to which we have that here in Minnesota. Thompson said many of the firms enrolled in the program operated out of dilapidated storefronts or rundown office buildings. The perpetrators often targeted people recently released from rehab, signed them up for Medicaid services they had no intention of providing. He noted many of the owners of companies engaged in HHS fraud had other companies through which they billed other Medicaid programs, such as the EIDBI Autism Program, the Adult Rehabilitative Mental Health Services Program, the Integrated Community Services Program, the Community Access for Disability Inclusion Program, PCA services, and other Medicaid waivered services. What we see are schemes stacked upon schemes, draining resources meant for those most in need. It feels never-ending. I have spent my career as a fraud prosecutor, and the depth of the fraud in Minnesota takes my breath away.
You read that and you just think about how much money this is that not only was stolen from the taxpayers, and they go into how much it kept growing and growing and growing, these programs, but it's obvious that people knew there was fraud. Then you find out it's going to a terrorist organization, and so we're funding the terrorist organization. How the hell do people not go to jail for this?
Well, they are. A number of people are being prosecuted. But, what is striking is not just was there massive fraud, but the massive fraud was funding terrorism. Here's what the City Journal continues saying. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of the Somali fraud story is the scale, with total costs running into the billions of taxpayer dollars. That raises the question, what happened to all that money? The Somali fraud rings have sent huge sums in remittances or money transfers from Minnesota to Somalia. According to reports, an estimated 40% of households in Somalia get remittances from abroad. In 2023 alone, the Somali diaspora sent back $1.7 billion, more than the Somali government's budget for that year. Our investigation reveals for the first time that some of this money has been directed to an even more troubling destination, the Al-Qaeda-linked Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab. According to multiple law enforcement sources, Minnesota's Somali community has sent untold millions through a network of hawalas, informal, clan-based money traders that have wound up in the coffers of Al-Shabaab. According to Glenn Kearns, a retired Seattle Police Department detective who spent 14 years on a federal joint terrorism task force, the Somalis ran a sophisticated money network spanning from Seattle to Minneapolis and were routing significant amounts of cash on commercial flights from the Seattle airport to the hawala networks in Somalia. One of these networks, Kearns discovered, sent $20 million abroad in a single year. So this is money that's coming from the Minnesota taxpayers. It is going through the Somali community in Minnesota, back to Somalia on the order of magnitude of $1.7 billion a year. And millions of those dollars were flowing directly to Al-Shabaab, an Al-Qaeda-linked major terrorist organization. This is tragic. It is shocking. And by the way, I'm curious, have you seen it on CNN?
No.
NBC, CBS?
Nope, none of them. None of them touching it.
MSNBC?
No.
Washington Post, New York Times?
Nope.
You would think that would be news.
I also look at the amount of money and how quickly it grew. That's something else that I do think is interesting here, is how,
staggering.
you want to talk about warning signs, Senator. There was clear warning signs, like very, very clear warning signs that this was happening. And yet, no one in government seemed to stop, pause, or ask a question. That part also to me is just like, is it always unlimited funds? Is that how it's now in government? Whatever you start, just keep making it grow and double and triple in size year after year after year and spending, and no one's like, hold on a second, this doesn't add up. This many kids with autism, that doesn't seem normal. Look how much it went doubled from last year, the year before that. I mean, there's a clear line here of like red flags that no one seemed to care about.
Well, and it's worth remembering, Tim Walz is not someone at the fringe of the Democrat Party. Tim Walz is who Kamala Harris thought should be vice president of the United States. Presumably, Kamala thought that he should succeed her and become the president of the United States. And Tim Walz, like many Democrats, but Walz is worse than many of them, just look the other way, just turned a blind eye. And one combination, it's a combination of a number of factors. One piece of it is just the left-wing view that the more money you're giving away in welfare, the better. And so it doesn't matter how much it grows. If you're giving $1 million this year, they want it to be $2 million, then 4, then 6, then 8, then 12. They want it to grow without any consideration about, number one, bankrupting the state and the taxpayers, but number two, about the impact of spending all that money trapping people in dependency. But a second component of it, it's not just dependency. Dependency assumes someone's actually getting welfare payments. It is also blatant fraud. And there is unfortunately a network of corruption where many of those engaged in fraud are also writing checks to elect Democrats. And if you look at the Somali community in Minnesota, it is a major voting network that votes for Democrats in Minnesota. And so at the end of the day, the Democrats, when it comes to buying votes, shoveling this cash into this maw of fraud, even though the taxpayers were being robbed and the money was going to a radical Islamic terrorist organization, if you're a Democrat, it made political sense on some level because you got money and you got votes. And it is astonishing that there's not... Do you know of a single Democrat denouncing this?
No.
I mean, that's a striking thing.
Yeah, that's why I love doing the show, because we give you this, and then as I said earlier, and I'll say it again, I genuinely hope that everyone that's listening will grab this, put it on their social media, because I think it's really important that people see it.
That's why this podcast is valuable.
Yeah, you are absolutely right there, no doubt about it. In communities around the world, millions of children like Lucy face the crushing weight of poverty, hunger, illness, and a lack of opportunity dim their bright futures. But through Compassion International and local churches, everything is changing. Lucy receives nourishing food, vital medical care, and the chance to go to school. She learns life skills, develops God-given talents, and builds a loving relationship with Jesus. It's a journey from vulnerability to empowerment, and it's sparked literally by your love. This transformation echoes far beyond Lucy, impacting her family, the community, and shaping the future of her nation. And you can make this profound difference right now. So join me in sponsoring a child. Visit compassion.com today. You'll empower a life and change the world. That's compassion.com to learn more. All right, and finally, Senator, I want to move to this other story, and it's an update, but it's a victory update, and it deals with Texas redistricting. It set off a firefight with California, Gavin Newsom getting involved, and them doing some just unbelievable gerrymandering of the map out in California. They claimed it was in retaliation for what Texas was doing. Then Democrats went after Texas and tried to stop it. And now we have Justice Alito, who is involved at the Supreme Court level. Give this update about the Texas redistricting fight.
Well, as everyone knows, President Trump has asked state legislatures, Republican legislatures, to redraw the map to elect more Republicans to the House. A significant reason for that is that there is right now an imbalance. Democrats have gerrymandered the living daylights out of blue states. So blue states send an overwhelming majority of their delegation to be Democrats, despite the votes of their citizens. And let me give you some specific numbers. So Texas right now has 38 congressional seats. Right now, Republicans have 25 of those. Democrats have 13. That means the percentage of Republicans in the delegation today is right about 66%. Now, about 56% of the state voted for Trump, a little more than 56%. So the current delegation is slightly more than the statewide vote for Trump, but not much. The state legislature redrew the map, so instead of electing 25 Republicans, the new map is expected to elect 30 Republicans, to add 5 new Republicans. Now, under that new map, it will increase, assuming those 30 Republicans win, it would increase the percentage of Republicans from 66% to 79%. Now, 79% is a larger portion. How does that compare to Democrat states? California, under their old map, 83% of the delegation is Democrat. Illinois, 82%. Oregon, 84%. Washington State, 80%. Maryland, 88%. Massachusetts, there are 9 congressional seats. You know how many Republicans are elected out of Massachusetts?
How many?
0. Goose egg. 100% of the Massachusetts delegation is Democrat. Connecticut, same thing, 100%. Texas went from 66 to 79%, still less than California. And what did California do in response? Increased it from 83% to 92%, dramatically gerrymandering its map. Now, what happened next is, of course, there was a lawsuit. There's always a lawsuit when this happens. And a federal district court, it's a 3-judge court, so it's 2 district judges and a federal court of appeals judge, which is it's a weird statutory creation that exists in redistricting litigation. That court, just over a week ago, struck down the Texas map. And it ordered that instead of being under the new map that would likely add 5 new Republicans, to go back to the old map that would not add 5 new Republicans. If that order stays in place, the likely impact of redistricting is the Democrats retake the House. I mean, it would flip the House. It was a very consequential decision. This was a 2-1 decision. It was authored by a federal district judge, Jeff Brown, who was a Republican nominated by Trump, joined by a Democrat district judge. And there was a dissent from Jerry Smith. Now, who is Jerry Smith? Jerry Smith is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals judge that's on this panel. I know Jerry Smith very well. He is one of the 2 most long-standing, most well-respected conservatives on the Fifth Circuit. Jerry Smith and Edith Jones have long been the conservative warriors on the Fifth Circuit. I got to tell you, Jerry Smith wrote a dissent in this case. Ben, I've probably read 1,000 dissents in my life. I've never read a dissent like Jerry Smith's dissent. He just unloaded on the majority opinion. He just eviscerated it as unprincipled, as political, as partisan, as wrong. That dissent, I mean, you literally read it, and you ought to Google and read it because you've never read a judicial opinion like this. Well, what happened on appeal is initially the appeal for a stay went up to Justice Sam Alito as the individual circuit justice sitting over the Fifth Circuit, and he stayed the opinion of the district court. So right now, as we're talking, the district court's stay will not go into effect, which means, as of right now, the new map stays in effect. Now, we may get a decision this week. It's possible the Supreme Court allows the district court opinion to go into effect, which would mean the old map would stay in effect. My prediction is this district court opinion will be stayed. It will be stayed through the election. We will stay with the new map that the legislature has drawn. And I think this district court opinion is going to be reversed on appeal. It is a big, big deal because this outcome, the court's not throwing out the map that the legislature adopted, could very well determine whether the House of Representatives in 2027 is Republican or Democrat. And so I'm very glad the Supreme Court stayed this decision.
It really is a big one, and it's another victory for rule of law and getting rid of so many activists that are trying to stop the way that the business is supposed to work. And that's what Democrats have been relying on for far too long. So it's nice to see justice here prevail. Don't forget, we do this show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Hit that subscribe or auto download button wherever you get your podcasts. Share it on social media wherever you can. This show and the Senator and I will see you back here in a couple of days.